This video is sponsored by Squarespace. The 2023 Red Bull RB19 is only dominant in the hands of Max Verstappen. That's an assertion that many of us, myself included, have been feeling, particularly of late. Obviously, Checo's had a couple of stinkers back to back. But am I right to feel that way? We know Sergio Perez is a top tier racing driver. He's proven it on many an occasion over the years. At Baku this year, he was clear over pace on Max. And after 5-6, including the sprint races this year, he was still a serious contender. Unfortunately, now that gap's extended to 53, it's going to take a huge amount of bad luck on Max's end, I think, for Checo to get a sight in. The thing is, though, is it fair to call the RB19 Red Bull dominant if only one of those two drivers is actually doing the dominating? Would Checo be able to do the same if it was all entirely down to him? To try and test this, I've gone back through all 8 races of this year, so about a third of the season done, and simply retold the tale with no Max Verstappen. Instead, Checo's teammate at Red Bull is Max Verstappen. Backmarker, pay driver useless. Would Checo be delivering enough of an advantage to dominate over the rest of the field? Let's talk about it. Round 1 in Bahrain, Checo takes pole position, 0.154 ahead of Charles Leclerc in P2. Sainz, Alonso and Hamilton round out the top 6, a 0.538 gap between P1 and P6. Then into the race with fastest lap going to Zhou Guanyu. Checo dominates, 26-second advantage between him and Fernando Alonso in P2. No safety cars to bunch up the pack, only a late VSC which wouldn't have changed the deltas massively. Sorry Charles, it happens. All in all, it's an ominous start to the season from Sergio Perez, alone in that Red Bull. Championship wise, 25 points over 18. Again, that gap between P1 and 2 is 7 points, which that gap alone is the same as getting P7 and fastest lap. Was the delta between P4 and P5 is the same as the delta between P8 and P9. Round 2, Saudi Arabia. Don't need to touch qualifying because Max had his stinker. Perez takes pole by a 10.5 over Charles Leclerc. A 0.680 gap between Checo in P1 and Lance in P6. As for the race, once again, Checo more than a 20-second advantage at the front and fastest lap as well. Obviously, no Max Verstappen means everyone else moves up a position, so Alonso gets P2 and Russell gets his first podium of the season. 51 points on the board for Sergio Perez, although Alonso is doing his job to get those P2s consistently. 36 points for him. Still no Charles Leclerc in the top 6. Yikes. Round 3, Australia. First chink in the armour here for Sergio, so he had a bit of an issue in qualifying. Seemingly the car just wanted to go forward when he wanted to turn it in. An issue he was struggling with in practice. Obviously in real life it didn't matter for Red Bull because Max was still up there doing bits, but without him the Mercedes boys seized the opportunity. 1-2 finish, Russell ahead of Hamilton. The entire top 6 split by about 4 tenths, which is pretty exciting. It's a recovery job for Checo in the race. He is only able to make it up to P4. Obviously, the shenanigans that went on at the end and the Alpines crashing into each other, blah, blah, blah. A lot went on. Checo did get fastest lap, however, he wasn't able to take the win. That went to Lewis Hamilton's first win of this new generation of Formula 1 car. Obviously finished under safety car, so Alonso 6 tenths back. And Stroll gets his first podium of the season. Well done, Lance. Checo's gap at the top reduces to 10 points, so still Alonso's keeping him keen, and then Lewis goes within 5 points of Alonso. Battle for P4 was tightened right up, but still somehow no Charles Leclerc. Not good. I'll tell you one driver's website I haven't looked at is Checo's, right? I've got to say, I'm not massively impressed. The imagery is a little bit blurry. He does have a link to his own foundation though, where he's given millions over the years to charities. So check that out as well. The benefits and possibilities that come with building your very own website are pretty much endless, and with today's video sponsor Squarespace, you can do that from the comfort of your own home. Portfolio, blog, online store, you want to shift stuff like Checo does? Go for it. 24/7 customer support, thousands of beautiful drag and drop templates. I've been using them for years and I think you should give them a go. Free to try, it's only when you want to put your finished website live to the world you have to pay anything, and when that time inevitably comes around, head to squarespace.com/TommoF1 to get 10% off your first website or domain. Round 4, Azerbaijan. Of course, Charles Leclerc takes pole position in the main race qualifying. We'll get onto the sprint in a minute. About 3 tenths ahead of Checo. The full top 6 spread is over a second here, so it's extended a bit at Baku. In the race though, as much as George Russell gets fastest lap, Sergio Perez opens up yet another plus 20-second gap. He was pushing hard in real life, of course, because Max was right in his mirrors, but that's not the case here. Still delivers all that pace. So Ferrari's 21 seconds behind in the hands of Charles Leclerc, so well done, Charles, finally converted. But Alonso did almost catch him right at the end, within a second. He almost gets another P2, but it's a P3 for Fernando. Extends his gap at the front to 20 seconds. Again, this is the third of 4 races where Checo hasn't had an issue. Clean weekend, and he's still 20 seconds plus ahead by the end of it. I did ask you lot on Twitter, and I know it's very difficult to quantify, but typically under normal, no crazy safety car, no recovery drive necessary, what do you consider to be a dominant gap at the front? And there was a good mixture of responses between 10 and 20, but also a lot between 20 and 30. 20 and 30 is typically the lower end of a full pit stop, isn't it? A pit stop, you usually lose about 20 seconds. If you've got a full pit stop at the head in normal conditions, I would agree that is what I would consider to be dominant, and 3 of these 4 have been, so well done, Checo. Round 4, Azerbaijan Sprint. Sprint shootout was a bit of a carbon copy, of course it was, because they didn't do enough to change it and make it feel different, which obviously I'm annoyed about, but whatever. Charles Leclerc still takes pole position by a 10.5 to Checo. A 1.149 second gap in the top 6. Alex Albon, P6, come on Williams. If F1 did ovals, Alex would win every single time, I swear to God. In the race, it's almost a 5 seconds, 4.5 second gap between Checo winning and Charles Leclerc P2, which again, for a sprint race, considering the restricted time, it's pretty comfortable for Checo. Also without Max, I know I've not put it on the screen, but Alex gets P8, so he gets a point. Come on. So you look at the championship once again, and still Charles, even with 2 P2s on the bounce, he doesn't get into the top 6. Checo extends his advantage at the front to 24 points over Fernando Alonso. Round 5, Miami. Qualifying, Checo gaps Fernando Alonso by 3.5 tenths around Miami. Pretty significant. Almost a second delta as well in that top 6. Shout out Kevin Magnussen sneaking in there in P4. I see you, K-Mag. You need to do this more often, because I've been very disappointed with K-Mag this season, I'll be honest. Anyway, in the race, Fernando Alonso gets fastest lap. However, Checo once again, another one. Another plus 20 second victory. 4 of 5 races now. Again, keeps it clean in the hands of Checo. He can dominate a race as long as he has a clean weekend. It's all good. It's all gravy, mate. Championship wise, of course, the advantage grows once again. It's now 30 points that Checo has over Fernando Alonso. It's looking good. And finally, Charles Leclerc makes it into the top 6 with 41 points. Come on, Charles. It's about time. Round 6, Monaco. In the space of 2 races, it goes to show if you can keep on picking up P2s, then it just takes 1 and maybe 2 stinkers to let someone back in the door. And unfortunately for Checo, even with no Max, he still bins it in Q1, which is the worst place on the entire calendar to f up in Q1. I mean, it was an unreal qualifying session, even with Max sneaking it at the end. My goodness, that was a vibe. I was watching that in the back of an Uber, actually. I reckon the driver probably gave me 1 star because I was making so much noise. But anyway, Fernando Alonso takes pole position ahead of Charles Leclerc by 22 thousandths of a second. You got Esteban Ocon only a 10th behind. Top 4 split by 2 tenths. Unfortunately for Charles, as good as this looked, he did also block Lando Norris. And again, no Max Verstappen doesn't stop that happening, so grid drop for you, Charlie. Sorry, again. As for the race, fastest lap goes to Lewis Hamilton. But race win with over 10 years waited. Just over 10. Since he won at Catalunya in 2013, Fernando Alonso sits on the top step of the podium. A 9-second gap between him and second place, Esteban Ocon. Shout out. Hamilton rounds out the top 3. Leclerc gets P5 in the end. But a great day for Alpine. Gasly, P6 as well. So here we go. 1 stinker from Checo combined with a race win for Fernando Alonso closes that championship gap to just 5 points. Speaks volumes for the value of consistency in this sport. Round 7, Spain. Bit of a mad qualifying this, as much as Max had a massive advantage at the front, which of course he converted in the race. With no Max Verstappen, Checo couldn't do the business. Goes out in Q2, gets in the gravel, messes up his setup for his quick lap. To be fair though, if Max wasn't in the sport and Vax Maslopen was right at the back, Checo would have actually got through in P10. Ultimately, it was a recovery drive needed from him, and in qualifying, my goodness, Sainz, pole position, Lando Norris 58 thousandths behind, Pierre Gasly 82 thousandths behind, Lewis Hamilton 84 thousandths behind. The top 4 split by a 10th. Madness. Stop being so good, Red Bull. Sainz taking it his home Grand Prix as well, the vibes would have been absolutely phenomenal for sure. And Fernando wasn't able to capitalise, making his own mistake in qualifying, starting him down in what, P8 it would have been. Bit of an opportunity missed for Fernando in this alternative Maxless universe. Checo was able to recover to P3, got the fastest lap as well, but was 11.722 seconds behind the eventual race winner for the second time in this alternative 2023 season. Lewis Hamilton 1-2 as well. Mercedes, George Russell recovering from just ahead of Checo and keeping ahead of Checo, which is very impressive in a Mercedes where they've just chucked new side pods on it and still need to understand that concept. So for George Russell to stay ahead of Checo speaks volumes, I think. Fernando was only able to recover to P6, choosing to stay behind of teammate Lance Stroll in P5. You got to play the long game, Fernando, sometimes, you know. Just give your fans a little wave. That's worth the 2 extra points, I'm sure. Now, to be fair, if it was a Maxless championship, look at the championship standings now. Checo's 138, Alonso's 125. That extra 2 points, surely Aston Martin are swapping them, surely. Lewis's second win closes his gap to Fernando to just 12, so you've got the top 3 split by an entire race win, 25 points. All 3 drivers from 3 different teams as well. It's exciting, man. So let's reflect on the original question. If there was a Maxless championship and Checo had to do it all on his own, which obviously, look, again, is that realistic? No, but even if it wasn't a great driver, they'd still occasionally take points off of, you know, Fernando and Lewis and all these other drivers, right, potentially. Although I guess if the delta between Checo and this made-up teammate was the same as the delta between Fernando and Lance, then I'd argue it wouldn't make too much of a difference to how these championship standards are looking. So would Checo be dominating points-wise? No, he would not. However, when Checo has managed a clean main race, 4 out of 7, he's always 20 seconds clear. So that implies to me that the pace for Checo to dominate the rest of the field in this RB19 is there. It's the mistakes, it's the lapses of judgment that have allowed Fernando and Lewis, in this instance, into the title fight alongside. And I would back those 2 as 2 of the greats to ever do it, to out-consistency Checo over the course of a season for sure. Now, I do think that those mistakes would be lesser in a Maxless championship because he's not got that teammate to try and catch up to all the time. You know, he knows, right? If he wants to beat Max wheel to wheel, he needs to be absolutely on it, and even then has to rely on Max messing up a bit. He wouldn't need to push as hard as he does. He could drive that little bit more conservatively, knowing that he's got the pace in himself and in the car underneath him. He'd probably be driving with a bit more confidence than he is at the moment. Fernando and Lewis are better racing drivers than Checo Perez. Okay, that's not a controversial thing to say. And clearly in this instance, that RB19 is making the difference to make Checo dominant over those 2. The thing in real life is then when you add Max Verstappen, who is the best driver in F1 right now, as far as I'm concerned, into that car, which is already clear because Checo would be dominant on pace over those 2 if he didn't make mistakes, then of course Max is going to just look comfortably clear because it's the perfect blend of man and machine, just like it was with Hamilton and that Mercedes in, 2020 particularly. Vettel and his Red Bull, Schumacher and his Ferrari. You look at so many of these like dominant seasons, and if it was just the car, it would be a dominant one too. But I mean, look at 2013, Webber didn't even finish second. The amount of times in Schumacher's dominant eras where Barrichello didn't finish second, it was Raikkonen or Montoya doing the business. The fact that Max still is able to unlock that percentage that just maximizes the performance of that car, that he can dance on the edge and just keep it clean. Again, sector 3 at Monaco spoke volumes, right? Not any drivers can do that, really. Not right now. Maybe a full of confidence Lewis Hamilton, a full of confidence Michael Schumacher or Ayrton Senna. But Lewis isn't at one with the Mercedes that he has right now, so I don't think he's going to pull out the level of performances that Max is, because Verstappen clearly is one-to-one with that car. A car without a driver sits still and does nothing. A driver without the car has to jog, okay? Fred Flintstone style. There is a theoretical optimum that all of these cars can deliver on any given track, in any given condition, and the ability for him to get so close to that optimum when it is also the best car, clearly. It's a recipe for greatness, and sometimes you just got to hold your hands up and be like, fair play. Do you think Checo would do the job on his own, win the championship for Red Bull with no Max Verstappen, no other driver anywhere near him? Let me know in the comments below. Big up Squarespace once again for sponsoring this video. My name's Tommo. Thanks again. Have a good one. Ta-da.